There's quite a sort of famous graph of the difference between the waterfall and the agile methods. And one is that you tend to notice in the first waterfall method, what happens is did you feel you were kind of sitting around a bit in the first one at the start? Yeah. You're kind of waiting a bit more for things to happen. And then all of a sudden, as I say, when the requirements changes start to come in when the customer sees it, you either can't do them or there's too much work to do that you can't do it in the deadline, and so the work gets pushed back. And so what tends to happen is the workload tends to go like this. So you start off at kind of a slow workload because you feel you've got lots of time on your hands, things to do around this sort of period. And then obviously as you go through the schedule, you get closer to the end, realise, uh-oh, we've got loads of stuff to change. And all of a sudden you hit here, which I've labelled as the panic area, where everyone starts panicking about the different deadlines. Now the difference with the chart we get with kind of the agile is we still kind of follow this trend, but it's not quite as high. And what we actually look to do is we kind of have waves. So what happens here is with each iteration, obviously towards the end you'll find there's a little kind of panic moment for that iteration, that you know you've got to get that little bit finished. But overall it kind of pushes you in each iteration to get that sub bit finished. So you're not further down where you've got all the workload to do. And that's kind of what these waves are. But overall, the chart follows less of a curve than the high, so you don't end up with this kind of end of project problem happening where the customer feels the right thing hasn't been delivered. Does that make sense to everybody? Yeah? And you can see how the iterations go. And it's interesting, I pulled this quote when I was originally reading about Scrum and all of that. I found this really interesting, that there is a Swiss Army manual, which I didn't know at first. But in the Swiss Army manual, there's a great quote in it which says, when the territory and the map disagree, believe the territory. And there's actually a great example of that of an off-piste skier. So as an off-piste skier, you're starting at the top of the mountain and coming down to the bottom. And you kind of see, similar to this photo here, in the way there's a forest. So is the best thing, as with traditional project management and the waterfall, to plan out your exact route along the way? Well, it's not really going to work, is it? Because by the time you get halfway through the forest, you're probably going to have hit a tree. So what you need to do is, as you're going through each small section of the forest, you're looking to plan out the next few steps in front of you and adapt. So you know you're going from the start of the forest to the end of the forest, but the path in the middle has got to be adaptable. And that's the point between agile development. So you're trying to do these small planned out iterations that are very different to the kind of general waterfall flow. And there is actually an Agile Manifesto. So these are the kind of 4 key components in it. So one of the things we're looking to do is we're looking to get rid of this huge kind of requirements document at the start, this big Microsoft Word document that takes ages to change and things like that. And what we're looking to do is minimize the documentation and focus more on the people and the feedback and the iterations we're going through. So those constant loops and getting lots of feedback and getting the customer involved. And it's really key to be very open to the customer about that. And to be key about the problems that are going on with that and why certain things are taking longer than others. Because if something's taking longer than others, it's actually useful for the customer to know that, because they might say, well, if it's taking that long, it's not actually that important. So push it further away and concentrate on something that's of more value. But you wouldn't get that feedback initially until you went through those iterations. What we're also trying to do as well is, I mean, this is more the software side again, but at the end of each iteration, you're looking to build something that the customer can actually see. So obviously with a traditional waterfall approach, they're not going to see anything until right at the end of the project. So they're giving you comments, but they've got no frame of reference. So by the end of this, through the iterations, what they're looking to do is give you lots of feedback over what's going on. And also, obviously, at the end of each component, you're delivering a working bit for them to see and give you feedback on. Obviously, again, that spills over into the customer collaboration over that. Where it says contract negotiation, obviously, I've dealt with some software development companies in the past that do that requirements document, and then halfway down, they charge a few £1,000s to make a change to it. I think some companies charge £500 to £1,000 to make one per line change to the requirements document. So you can imagine how the costs suddenly spiral out of control.